Question 1 says, an electronics store has a frequent shopper program. The buyer earns 4 points for every movie purchased. Which graph models the situation? So the first thing you want to figure out is this going to be represented by dots or by a line? So can you have partial points earned for, partial of a movie rental? That's not going to work out. So we can determine that it's not going to be a straight line, it's going to be dots. So then we just need to figure out which one of these matches the situation. So basically what we want to do is we want to figure out what are these lined increments first. So if 3 sections is 15, then that means that each of these sections would be 5. So this would be 5, 10, and then 15 going up. Where over here we have between 5 and 0, so each one of these is also going to be 5. So we have 5, 10, 15, 20, and then we end up back at 25. So if we go to 1 should be a little bit below 5 on our point. This is really only a little bit below half, where if we look at this one at 1, it's just a little bit below 5, so that would give us a closer representation. You can also say after 5, it should be at 20, because if you're, 5 times 4 gives you 20. So if I look over to 5 movie rentals and go up, that should be at a 20 mark, where if I look at this one, 5, and then I go up, that's only at 10. So that's another way that I can figure out that that is the graph that I want to use. Question 2 says, the variable y is a proportional relationship with x as suggested by the graph. Use the graph to write an equation that models the line. So we know that it's going to be y equals our unit rate times x, and we're not going to have a y-intercept here because it crosses at 0, 0. So we need to figure out our slope. We can use the point 0, 0, and then you just want to pick another point on the graph. I'm going to use 228 because I already know the values, but there are plenty of points that you could pick on here. So when I look at my rise to figure out m, or my slope, my rise, I'm going up 28, so that's positive, and then I'm going to the right 2, and 28 over 2 simplifies down to 14, which I would want to place right here. So my answer would be y equals 14x to represent that situation. Number 3 says, find the slope of a line that passes through the point 2, 7 and 2, negative 6. So the first thing I would do is I know that I'm looking at y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. And remember, you can kind of pick which ones you want to be first. I normally pick the first one. So that's going to be x1, y1, x2, and y2. So I always start off with my line and my minus signs, and then I find my number. So y1 is going to be 7, and then y2 is going to be negative 6. Then I have x1, which is 2, and then x2, which is also 2. So when I go ahead and solve this, I have 7 minus negative 6, which is the same as 7 plus 6. So that's going to give me 13. And then 2 minus 2 gives me 0. Now remember, anytime you have 0 at the bottom, that means that your slope is undefined. If you forget that, you can type in 13 divided by 0 on your calculator, and you will get an E, which stands for error, because you cannot divide by 0. If you get that one in a slope of 0 confused, if you ended up with like 0 over 13 and you type that in, then you would just get 0, which indicates that you have a slope of 0. Number 4, it says find the slope of a line that contains 10, negative 1 and negative 8, 6, and then write your slope in simplest form. So very similar to the one we just did. So we have x1, y1, x2, y2. Do my line with my minus signs. So I'm going to start with my y's at the top. So I have negative 1 minus 6 over 10 minus negative 8. If I have negative 1 minus 6, that's the same as negative 1 plus negative 6, which gives me negative 7 over, and then if I have 10 minus 8, that's the same as 10 plus 8, which gives me 18. So my answer would be negative 7 over 18. Remember to pull that negative out front. On question 5, it says find the slope of a line and write your answer as a fraction in simplest form. So they gave us 2 points here, which is nice. You can pick whichever one you want to start off with. So I'm going to pick this point to begin, and I am going to go up my rise. I'm going to go up 1, and then I'm going to run or move over 2. So my slope here, but I went to the left, so that's a -2. So my slope here is -1/2. Make sure, remember, you can always check yourself. Anytime that a line is slanted this way, it's always going to be negative. If it's slanted this way, then it will be positive. So in this case, you can tell it's negative right just from looking at it before you do any calculations. So as soon as I see this one, I can tell that my line is going to be positive because it's slanting in the positive direction. So now I want to find what my slope is. I'm going to start here for my rise, but again, you can pick either point, and I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go ahead and write that. Now I'm going to the right, which is positive, 1, 2. So when I simplify that, I get 2, or you could also put 2 over 1. Now this one, remember, anytime you have a vertical line, then that means that your slope is going to be undefined. Remember, if it's going across this way, that's when you have a slope of 0. And if you get confused about that too, you can pick 2 points. I did 3, 2, and let's say, 2, -3, and then I also chose 2, 1. And then I could say, okay, how much am I rising? Well, I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm running 0. And as we talked about before, if you try to do 4 divided by 0, you're going to get an error, which means undefined. So that's another way you can check it if you get confused on a test. Okay, number 8, remember, if you have a line that's slanted this way, that means that you have a negative slope. And if you get confused about that, remember, you can always pick points and then calculate your slope from those points. Now on number 9, we have a question that has a line in slope-intercept form, which remember is y equals mx plus b, where m is our slope and b, is our y-intercept. So my slope here, I just need to identify it, is going to be 15. My y-intercept, remember, you have to look at if it's being added or subtracted. In this case, it's being subtracted, so that means my y-intercept, is a -4. And then, is it proportional? Yes or no? In this case, no, it is not. And how I can tell is because that y-intercept is a number and it's not 0. Remember, if it's proportional, it looks like y equals mx because we don't write plus 0, which is where your y-intercept would be. Number 10, very similar here. We have y equals just mx. We can look at it plus b if you want, but when you don't have a b written, it just means that your y-intercept is going to be 0. Now our slope here is still going to be the number before x. In this case, that's going to be a slope of 3. And then is this proportional? Yes, this is proportional because we do not have our y-intercept is at 0. We do not have that listed on our equation.